The Cambridge B2 First Speaking exam isn't only about your language, it's also about your exam technique. And sometimes the difference between a pass and a fail can be your technique. My name is Toby, this is Smash English, and here are the 5 most common mistakes that people make when taking the B2 First Speaking exam. Yes, I know, exams are boring and stressful, so you probably will feel bored and stressed, but if you're happy, it will improve your marks, and here is why. When you are bored and depressed and sad, your intonation flattens. When you are happy, your voice naturally rises and falls. You sound more natural, and this will improve your marks for pronunciation. But also think about your partner. Remember, interacting with your partner is a very important part of the exam. And lastly, sometimes students make mistakes during the exam, and then they get more stressed, more anxious, more nervous, and then they make another mistake and get more stressed, more anxious, more nervous, and they're constantly thinking about the mistakes in the past instead of what they should be saying in the future. Cambridge uses a positive marking scheme. So if you make a mistake, don't let it distract you. Move on and use the next questions to show the examiner what you can do. So being happy helps with your pronunciation, being happy helps with your interactive communication, and being happy helps stop you thinking bad things about the past that prevent you from doing well in the future. Remember, the whole point of the speaking exam is getting you to speak so the examiners can assess your language. If you don't talk enough, then you're not giving them enough material to assess. This is why the examiner will ask you annoying questions, like, do you like playing sport? Yes, I do. Why? Ugh. This is why I ask my students why to almost everything they say, to get them into the habit of speaking for extended periods of time. But talking too much can be a problem too, for 2 reasons. The first is the more you talk, the more likely you are to go off topic. The less likely you are to stay relevant. A perfect example of this is the first question in the exam. Where are you from? Please give a short answer to this question. I'm from London. Stop. Finish. Don't tell us the history of your town. I did not ask for the history of your town. Keep things short sometimes to stay on topic, especially for part 1. Talking too much is also bad for interactive communication, because maybe you're not giving your partner the opportunity to communicate. The exam is not a competition between you and your partner. It's not a game of who can say the most words. Instead, it's a conversation, and you should be working with your partner. So ask your partner questions about them. Get to know them in the exam, especially for parts 3 and 4. If you don't do this, and it's me, you will definitely lose marks for interactive communication. Not answering the question in part 2 is a very common problem. Remember, in part 2, you are given 2 pictures and you must answer a question about them. The task is not about describing the pictures, so please do not describe the pictures. One problem with describing pictures is it limits your potential grammar. If you're describing something that is happening, you can only really use the present simple and the present continuous. The questions are designed to broaden the amount of grammar that you can use, and also so you can speculate. The questions usually ask why someone is feeling a certain way, why someone is doing something, why someone has done something. These questions encourage you to use modal verbs, speculative language, past modals of deduction. And if you don't answer the question, you don't have the opportunity to use this language and show the examiner the fantastic grammar that you know. So please, in part 2, do not describe the pictures, answer the question, and only answer the question. It's important to have a normal, natural conversation with your partner. Of course, I'm referring to parts 3 and 4. This is especially true for part 3, the part where you must work with your partner to answer a question using prompts provided. What many candidates do, and what examiners hate, is when the candidates do not interact with each other. Instead, they talk about each prompt individually, and none of them references what the other candidate said before them. Make sure you listen to what your partner said, and then comment on what they said. And when I say comment, I don't mean say, "I agree," and then moving on. No, instead rephrase what your partner said. Put it into your own words to show that you understood, then state whether you agree or disagree, and then try and connect it to your next point. This is how a normal conversation works, so why would a Cambridge exam be any different? In part 4, you can ask your partner questions. If your partner says something that's interesting to you, do not hesitate to ask them a question about it. Remember, in part 4, the examiner is only asking these questions to get you to produce language. Anyone can speak in this part, so if your partner says something cool, then tell them you think it's cool. Ask them when they did it or why they did it, or ask for more detail about what they're talking about. That is what we want. So have a conversation, relax. Part 4 is about you and your partner. The examiner doesn't exist. Have a good time. And lastly, this is the one piece of advice that I give all of my students, and it is the most important. Avoid the present simple. Okay, sometimes you will need the present simple, right? My name is, okay, I live in, yeah, you need the present simple. However, when you can avoid it, don't use it. The present simple is simple grammar. Even if you speak perfect English for the entirety of the exam, if you're predominantly using the present simple, it's impossible to pass. To pass, you need to at least try complex grammar. This sounds a lot more difficult than it is. If you watch my video on part 1 of the First Certificate Speaking exam, you will see lots of useful structures that you can use to avoid the present simple. For example, do you like sport? Well, I used to when I was young, but now I am older, I prefer gaming. So instead of using "no, I don't, I prefer gaming," we're using "used to" instead, to talk about a past habit and routine. Now remember, your answers to the questions in part 1 that are basic questions on familiar topics don't have to be true. So find any way you can to use some more complicated grammar. Tell me about your best friend. Well, to be honest, if only I had a best friend, but I don't. Instead, I have lots of friends. So instead of just using the present simple, we're trying to mix things up using different grammatical structures that make the examiners go wild. And with that, we are finished. Those were the 5 most common mistakes that candidates make when taking the B2 First Speaking exam. If you liked the video, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave a comment down below. My name is Toby, and this was Smash English.